Hello, welcome to another weekly devotion with Pastor Andrew. That's me. I've just come in out of the rain, so I'm drenched, and my glasses are full of rain. But I'm festive, right? It's muggy outside. It's hot. It's summer. It's summer. So we focus again in the midst of Pentecost. On this Gospel of Matthew, and really this theme that's been going on is discipleship. What is it? How do I be a disciple? What does that truly mean? It's this ponderance, it seems, over weeks about that one word, I would say one action, but it's not. It's several actions. It's the living it, right? We're going to talk from a book that we normally just don't hear from, Zechariah. Is that in the Old Testament? Who knows, right? Every once in a while we hear from Zechariah, but here we have this prophet speaking to the people, to us. All of it connecting to this idea of discipleship, of being God's child. What does that mean? What is that? What are we called to in the midst of that, etc.? Because that connects, of course, to the gospel focus that we'll hear this next Sunday. This last Sunday was those short verses, Matthew 10, 40 through 42, this encouragement, but also the question of how are you living it, and surprise, surprise, we dive into this coming week, the 11th chapter of Matthew, where Jesus goes further into it. He further explains it, and where it sounds maybe like a burden, right? We heard on Sunday, Jesus even said, this is not something that is light work. This is not just a simple check it off. But don't be overwhelmed. He concludes, I'm pretty sure that's the conclusion of Matthew 11. He concludes, here's everything with discipleship, but remember, this yoke is light. What does he say? All who are weary and carrying heavy burdens, I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Yeah. It's another one of those where we hear that and we might go, no, this is a very heavy yoke. This is a very heavy burden. But do we perhaps make it that way? I know I do sometimes. So anyway, our focus today, our God pause, comes from Zechariah 9 through 12. It goes this way. Rejoice greatly, O daughter Zion. Shout aloud, O daughter Jerusalem. Lo, your king comes to you, triumphant and victorious is he, humble and riding on a donkey. Sound familiar? Riding on a colt, the foal of a donkey. He will cut off the chariot from Ephraim, and the war horse from Jerusalem, and the battle bow shall be cut off, and he shall command peace to all nations. His dominion shall be from sea to sea, and from the river to the ends of the earth. As for you also, because of the blood of my covenant with you, I will set your prisoners free from the waterless pit. Return to your stronghold, O prisoners of hope. Today I declare that I will restore to you double. So as Christians, to look back at these words, we say, oh, well, that's obviously Christ. You're talking about Christ here. But at the time, it was the idea of keeping God in focus in the midst of great disaster, great hardship. So our devotional writer writes this. There is a mystery to the ways of God. There is a certain irony in the way today's reading of Zechariah takes me back to Palm Sunday, and then even further back to Advent when we were engaged in talk of messianic hopes. Yes, see, there's that messianic hope in there, isn't there? All this points us to thoughts of freedom. Freedom is something we celebrate tomorrow as a nation. Ooh, yes, so obviously I'm recording this on the 3rd because I'm taking the 4th off. For ancient Israel, God's covenant was designed to give these prisoners hope. I have witnessed too many people shackled, weighed down, often by a grief they could not escape. The king comes riding in not on a war horse, but on a donkey. Yeah, it's that constant idea. I'm all about constants. I'm all about these things these reminders that we need. All those people waiting for a Messiah. What were they waiting for? Someone to ride in on a war horse, sword drawn, chopping off heads, violence, violence, violence. Because that's how you conquer, because that's what these people have lived, because that's what's in their minds, that's what's been built up over centuries. And how does Jesus come? Not on a war horse, not with sword drawn, right? In fact, he says, put your swords away, right? When he's captured, put your sword away. Put it away. This must happen. This must be. This is the way it is. Peace, not violence. Love, not hate. But we need, the king comes riding in not on a war horse, but on a donkey. With humility he comes. Hard to comprehend how this could mark triumph and victory, right? Could this be a sign that even today the battle bow might be broken? Perhaps the king will command peace and the shootings and violence. Whoa, this took a turn. Perhaps the king will command peace amid the shootings and violence in our schools, workplaces, and nations. The blood of the cross sets us free. I'm not going to lie. So I felt we were building up to something there, and our devotional writer is like, boom! Cut the violence. Let's do something about all these mindless shootings. A good point, but hey, here it is, right? But how do we seek peace and justice, not in a violent way, but in a peaceful way, in a way as one? That's, I think, a part of the problem, part of the key problem. Okay. A prayer. Ride on, Jesus. Let nothing hinder your will and purpose for our world. Grant us your grace and fill the nations with your peace. Amen. So usually at the bottom here, it'll say if it's a pastor, if they're retired. I have to imagine this pastor is retired. But maybe not. Anyway, quite a lot to think about. Always an interesting connection when we can look back, and it's very hard. My Old Testament professor, one of them was always like, we need to read the Old Testament, but take Jesus out of it. Well, how do you do that, right? Even to this day, it's like, that's kind of difficult. But you can get into that mindset, but it's so difficult because, we hear this and we think, well, this is Jesus, right? This is how he came. This is his story. This is what we know of Palm Sunday. This is what we know of Easter. This is what we know of his ministry. However, we also must be in mind of the context that these words came to the people. Hardship, deep depression, right? Not only emotionally, but physically, right? Where's God in this? I recently was reading something from an excerpt from a book about some people that were in concentration camps. How did they keep the faith? How did they remain faithful? Because they knew God was with them. We hear that and we go, yeah, okay, but, my mortgage is due and I can't pay it, or, my significant other or my loved one is at death's door. God is with me, great, but, where's the comfort with that? There's just all those emotions. Even myself, I feel emotions right now. But there's something about faith. There's just something about faith. There's something about that connection that does something to us, that affects us in such a way. And that, I think, I hesitate to say that's what we need. That's what we strive for. But that is something that can be very freeing. That can be very freeing. And if we remember that and we constantly are working with it, then I do believe miracles happen. Miracles happen. Okay, I don't really know that there was a lot of a devotional here, but just lots of things as always to think about. As always, I enjoy reading these along with you. Some of my thoughts come out and things like that. But it's always, like I said, powerful to read some of these Old Testament readings that it's like, well, this is Jesus, and finding that connection there, because it also helps to remind us that we are connected not only to our Christian siblings, but to so many others. We are all, I'm going to say it, we're in this together. And wouldn't it be great if we actually believe that and practice that? So, until next week, have a wonderful 4th, whatever you're doing. I'm going to grill some hot dogs, and we'll see you next week. God bless.